Hi, my name's Sam Stone, and in today's video we're going to be making drum and bass using only free or stock plugins. Now, music production can be an expensive hobby to start. There are tons of popular plugins which can easily cost hundreds, and it can feel impossible to make decent music without spending your life savings on a new reverb or a new synth. However, in today's video, we're going to be making Belgian jump up style drum and bass just using free or stock plugins. Now, I should mention before the video starts, if you want to get access to the project files for this video, as well as exclusive dubs, sample and preset packs, exclusive tutorials and more, make sure you check out the top link in the description. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So here we are in FL, obviously tempo at 175 as always for drum and bass. Now the first thing we're going to do, because it's drum and bass, is we're going to grab some drums. So first I've just grabbed this kick. I've noticed it in this kind of Belgian jump up Primate Captain bass style. A lot of the drums tend to be quite clicky and they have a bit of a body to them but not loads. So if we just take a listen to this kick here. Now it sounds cool, nice and clicky, but I do think it's just got a bit too much tail to it, so we're gonna cut that back. Now it's a bit more concise, a bit shorter, and I think it will work well. Next up, I've just grabbed this snare. Now I noticed in this kind of style they tend to have quite similar snares to dubstep, but anyway, we've got the snare here which sounds like this, and I think again actually we're just gonna cut down the decay on that using that out knob. If you don't know about that, it's very useful. And then we can also just turn down the level a bit there. And then finally, I've just grabbed a couple of different hat samples. So we've got this short hat sample first. Just sounds like that, nice and simple. Then we've got this really long splashy hat sample, which sounds like that. And yeah, I think they're going to work quite well. But what we can actually do is we can stretch out this hat sample. So you want to make sure that this is selected under the audio section. And this just means when you drag a sample, it will stretch it out. So if we just drag it like that, it's just made it a bit longer, which I think will work well. And then we can lay down a basic pattern. So we can just have some of these hats like that. We're going to cut the tail off this splashy hat because it's so long. We don't need that. And then we can just put the snares like that. And then we can duplicate these across there. We can duplicate them all again. And just to make life easier, I'm just going to trim down the snare a bit like that. And there you go. We've got a basic drum pattern. Now, obviously, the levels are all over the place at the moment. So if we have a look at this in the mixer, we can drag this splashy hat sample way down because that's super loud. We can drag that other hat sample down, drag the splashy hat sample down some more. Oh, there you go. You've got a decent mix going, but just to make it even better, we're going to select all these drums and route them to here. And then I'm just going to go through and name them all and colour them in so it's just a bit easier to see what's going on. And now it's all nice and organised. So we can add some basic effects to here. So first of all, we're just going to grab an EQ. We're just going to do a simple low cut. Nothing too insane. You want to be careful low cutting a snare like this because obviously there's the fundamental notes that you can see. That bit just there, which you want to keep in a lot of the time. And we want to keep it in today. Then we can just add a bit of a top end boost like that. And then we can experiment with OTT, which is a great free plugin. I don't think we'll need too much of this, to be honest. Yeah, I think it works well like that. And then finally, we can just add in some reverb. We don't want to overdo this, but at the same time, we don't want to underdo it either. And we have to bear in mind at the moment, we've just got the drums, not the full track. So the reverb will be really obvious. So if I remember, which I might not, we can come back to this later and tweak it. And then finally, we can just add a simple low cut to the two hats, just like this. And then we can duplicate this across to the splashy hat as well. And then finally we can get some effects going on the drum bus, and we're just going to use Fruity Fast Distort for this. So if I just drag the threshold down, because I know that will make it sound insane. And we can just drag the kick down a bit because you can hear it's distorting because it's driving the distortion a bit too hard. And then finally, I'm just going to turn the drum bus up. And yeah, I think that's a pretty decent drum mix for the time being. Like I said, we can revisit certain elements when we've got more of the track in place so we can kind of see how everything sounds together. But for now, let's move on to the basses. So here we are inside of Vital. Now, if you never use Vital, it's a great free synth. Pretty similar kind of thing to Serum if you've heard of that. But like I said, this is free, Serum is not. So yeah, this is what you'll see when you first open up Vital. just got this initial wavetable. Now the first thing we can do here is we can turn this down 1 octave or 12 semitones, minus 12 on there. Then we can go onto the wavetable and we want to grab vital sine 2, which will sound like that, kind of like a bit of a weird sine wave. And then we can just turn up the wavetable position on here to about 95. That kind of area, and you'll hear that kind of cool chordy type sound. Sounds a bit kind of garagey, but obviously when we're done with this it's going to sound nothing like that. And then we can just drag the level down and we're going to assign LFO1 to this, and then we can just make a simple shape like this, and we're just going to set the frequency to 1/8, and we can set this to envelope mode as well, so it just plays once. And then finally we're going to turn on spectral time skew on here, and we can just drag it down to about here. Not doing too much, but just adds a little bit to the sound. And then finally we can assign the LFO1 to the wavetable position, and we're going to drag it back to about here. And yeah, that's everything in this window, so let's move on to the effects section. So first of all, we're going to grab a chorus. We can turn the cutoff up a bit, leave the other knobs all where they are, but we're going to turn this frequency up to 1/16. And you can hear it sounds kind of weird, so we're going to turn the mix all the way down and assign LFO1 to this, and then we can turn this back to about here, because we want a bit of the chorus but not too much, and we don't want the kind of sustain we get otherwise. Next up we're going to grab a delay, which is very important for Belgian jump up. If you've never seen this, kind of an essential trick for getting these kind of bass sounds. So first of all we're going to set this to seconds because it will give us more flexibility, and then we can drag this down to, we're going to do 0.24. And you can hear it's already given it that kind of metallic sound that you get in Belgian jump up. And then we're going to turn the cutoff up a bit, and we're going to turn the mix up a bit. Now it's important to notice, so I'll play a low note and then high notes here, that even though I'm playing different notes, it is actually the same note, if you get what I mean. It's just like different tone. So with Belgian jump up, if you want to adjust the tuning of your bass, you kind of need to tune it by adjusting either the time on here, or you can export this bass, figure out what the note is that you're playing through the time here, and then you can repitch it in the piano roll. And then next up we're going to grab some distortion, and we're going to set this to hard clip mode, and we can turn it up to about here. And suddenly everything gets very loud and distorted, but that's what we want. And then finally we can turn on the filter. We can turn the resonance all the way down, and we're just going to turn the cutoff up to about here, and we can assign LFO1 to it. And there you go, you've got a really cool sounding Belgian jump up squelchy laser bass type thing in Vital. Now if you want to get different kind of sounds, the main things I recommend to mess around with are the spectral time skew, and also the wavetable position and the modulation on the wavetable position from LFO1. You can get all kinds of different sounds with that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off a pattern here, and we can just put in some notes just so we can see what we've got going on. And if we just listen to that with the drums, we've got a cool basic thing going just to see how that bass sounds with the drums and to know what we need to add in next. And then you can see here I've just gone through and added some effects to the bass to get it sounding how we want. So I've just added a simple low cut, nothing too fancy, it just kind of takes the unwanted low end out. And then I've just got an OTT on here, just the depth at 30%. Just kind of crispens it up a bit. And then we've just got our good old friend Fruity Fast Distort for some nice distortion, which is really crushing it quite hard. And then finally we just have a kick sidechain. So I've just routed the kick to here, dragged the level all the way down, because obviously we don't want the sound of the kick going through the bass channel. Just turn the sidechain to kick on the compressor, set the threshold and the ratio, and then if I unmute that, and there you go. We've got the first bass done. Now, you'll see here that this is actually the second bass, and it's actually very simple to the first bass. So you can basically just duplicate the first bass and make a few changes, which is what I've done here to get this second really cool long bass sound. Now, obviously we've got Vital Sine 2 still. We've just got the wavetable position up here. We turn the level all the way up, still down an octave. And then we've just got this sine wave from the Basic Shapes wavetable on oscillator 2. Turn the level to here, down 2 octaves. And yeah, it's very simple in this window to be fair, and it's not much more complicated in here. So we've just set the chorus to freeze, and it just gives it that sound. And obviously we're gonna turn the LFO modulation off on the mix, and we can just turn the mix up to here. And then if we look in the mixer here, you can see I've added on some effects. So we've just got this reverb with the low cut here, the high cut there. We've turned the size, diffusion and decay way down and turned the wet level up, and it gives us this sound. Just adds a bit of nice stereo width to it. Now you'll also see that I've left a gap here. Now this is for a plugin which we're going to add in a bit, which is going to do something really cool, but we're not going to add it just yet. And then we've just got an EQ with a low cut, OTT on 38% depth, and once again some distortion, and of course finally a kick sidechain. And I'm just going to put in a basic note here, which I reckon we can have here. Now you might be wondering why I'm leaving those gaps, but we're about to add in another bass. Now then, here you can see we've got our third bass. Now this is actually quite a bit more complicated than the other ones, but it's not too bad. If you just follow along with what I've done here, you can kind of make sense of what's going on. So first of all, we've got this basic shapes wavetable. It was just a sine wave, but we've turned it down 2 octaves, and we've used this vocode thing, which we've just turned it up to here, and we've modulated with LFO1, which gives it this kind of cool shape. And we've also turned on FM from oscillator 2, which is just set to this initial wavetable, so you don't even need to change it. We've got the level all the way down because we're just using that for the FM synthesis. Literally nothing else has changed in here, but it's important to note that the phase on oscillator 1 is set to 239 because when using FM from another oscillator, I've noticed that if you mess around with the phase, it can give you some cool sounds. And then we've also just got basic shapes on oscillator 3, just this sine wave for kind of like a subby thing, just to add a bit to the sound. Turn it down 2 octaves, and we're just modulating the level with LFO1, but not too much, as you can see there, and everything else is just stock on there. And then we've got this filter, which is just on oscillator 1. We've turned it to a low cut filter, and we're just modulating the cutoff with LFO1. And then if we go into the effects, it's actually kind of similar effects to the last basses in a way. But we've got this chorus again, we've got the mix turned down to here. These are all the other settings, turn the cutoff down a bit. And then we've got this low cut with a very aggressive resonance. And we're just modulating the cutoff with LFO1, so it gives it that kind of swooping effect. Finally, we've just got hard clip distortion, which we've just absolutely cranked. And it'll give you a sound like this. Just a very cool kind of woobby, soary, I don't even know how to describe it, but just a cool bass sound. And then in terms of the effects in the mixer, we've just got fruity fast distort first, not doing too much. And then in terms of the effects in the mixer, we've just got fruity fast distort first, giving it some nice crunchy distortion. Then we've just got an EQ with a simple low cut like all the other ones. And then finally, we've got fruity limiter again for a kick sidechain. And then I reckon if we add in a pattern like this, we've got a cool kind of thing going. But of course, before we go any further, we're going to need a sub bass. So making a sub bass in Vital is actually insanely easy. So you just want to grab the basic shapes wavetable, leave it on a sine wave, turn it down 2 octaves. You can leave the level where it is. And then I've just turned on soft clip distortion, turned up the drive. But then you can take your sub and you can layer it underneath these main basses like this. So I'm just going to use quite a short bass for those first different bass sounds that we've got. And then we're just going to turn the sub down because it is a bit overpowering at the moment. And yeah, you got a cool sound like that. Now, the thing I mentioned earlier about this extra plugin we're going to add. So as you can see here, we've got this great free plugin called Gate Lab. Now this just adds kind of gates to sounds. I've added a couple of my own presets here, but you can just draw them out. If you want to do it quicker, you can set it to mono, but I've got this here, which if we just take a listen here, it just adds a really cool stuttering effect. We're going to turn this up, and we can use automation in the mixer on the effect to determine when we want this to come in. So I think if we have it just come in at the end of this pattern like this, it will sound quite cool because it just helps to add some variation at the end to set it apart from the other bass bits which are playing that same thing. So if we just take a listen here, and I think we can just shorten this so it kind of goes back into the longer note at the end. And yeah, it's sounding really cool. Now there's another thing we're just going to do here. If we grab these 3 basses, and in fact let's just move this mixer track over here, we can grab the 3 high basses that we've got, route to this track only. Now this means that we've now got a bass bus. And what we're going to do is we're just going to sidechain the snare to this. We're going to grab a limiter here. We can turn on to the compressor mode, set this to snare, turn the ratio up and the threshold down quite a lot. Now I think that sounds cool, but actually what we're going to do is we're going to move this over to the long bass that we've got here. We're going to have it on here. We'll just rename it to snare sidechain. And of course we actually have to sidechain the snare to it for that to work. And then if we just take a listen here. And then I think there's actually one last thing which we can add. So we're going to open up a new instance of Vital. So what this is doing, if I just play it quickly, it's just an extra layer which we can add on top of the basses just to kind of thicken up the mix a bit, make everything sound a bit more gritty. So we've just got a sine wave from the basic shapes once again, turn down 2 octaves, then we've used this sample section and we've got this white noise here. And we've just got the level turned down quite low, but you can mess with that of course. And then in the effects we've got some chorus, distortion, and we've just got this filter which we've just turned to a high pass all the way up there. Set the cutoff really high because we don't want unwanted low end in this, and then we can just layer this on top of the long bass that we have from before. So if we just go and duplicate this MIDI, copy and paste across to here, make sure it's in the right place. Let's see how this sounds. Now it's quite subtle, but if you can hear it, if you've got decent headphones and stuff, it really does make a cool difference just to kind of add some top end grit to the sound. But yeah, I think that's everything for the basses and the drums, so let's move on to some cool melodic stuff for the intro. So the first thing that we've got here is once again in Vital, and we've just got this Reese bass sound which is really cool. So what we've done here, we've got the 2 initial wave tables, we've left them as they are, we've turned them down 2 octaves, and then we've adjusted this fine tune. So the first one is on +20 and oscillator 2 is on -23. We've also turned the phase randomization down to 0 on both, and then on oscillator 3 we've just got a sine wave from the basic shapes, turn that down 2 octaves as well. And then we've just got white noise here, very low level, and then we've got the filter which is on oscillators 1, 2 and the sample, and sample is the white noise. Turn the drive up a bit and turn the key tracking all the way up, which is important because it means that when you play higher notes, the filter will open more, and when you play lower notes, it will open less. And then in terms of the effects section, we've got some chorus once again, and then we've got a compressor on multiband mode, we've got some soft clip distortion, and we also have another filter just to kind of get rid of unwanted top end. Because we don't want it to be too buzzy, because it's not supposed to be like an insanely aggressive Reese. This is just for a cool intro melodic type thing. And then we can start doing some basic structuring. So for this, let's have a drop that starts on bar 17. And then if we just make a new pattern here, we can just drop this in, and we're just going to make a basic Reese pattern here with the Reese bass that we just have. So this is what I came up with. Yeah, I think it works quite well, but of course we need some other elements underneath it. So if we reopen Vital, we can add a couple more elements. So first of all, we've got this very simple ARP patch that I made. So we've just got LFO1 assigned to the level on here. We're just using this quad saw wavetable. This is being modulated all the way. We're not messed with the pitch of it or anything. And then if we go into the effects section, we've got some chorus, some compression, multiband compression, some distortion, a low cut filter, another filter, and then some reverb. So actually quite a lot going on in here, but you can copy all these settings, and we've just got LFO1 assigned to the cutoff of this filter, and it will give you a sound like this. And then if we just grab a new pattern, whack it in here, we can make a cool pattern for the ARP. And yeah, I reckon this sounds pretty cool. Let's have a listen to what I've just put in here. Complements the Reese quite well, I think. And then we can just add some effects to this ARP. So let's add an EQ. We can take out any unwanted low end with a low cut, but then we can also add a high cut because it's kind of supposed to be an intro backgroundy type thing. And then we can also add some more reverb with Fruity Reverb too. So let's turn down early reflections, turn the wet up, turn the dry down a bit. And then I think you got the basis for a very cool atmospheric intro there. And then we can just duplicate these along, and we're gonna make this, where do we want it to stop? I think just here, because we're gonna have the snare there for the pre-drop thing. And then if we just duplicate this a bit longer so we can get an idea of how the drop's gonna work in terms of the whole demo of the track. And then the last melodic element I think we could add in the intro is kind of saw-y type synth that Primate likes to use. So you can see here this basic saw patch that I've got going, which sounds like this. So we've just got the initial wavetable on oscillator 1. We just left the level and everything else as it is. We've turned up the unison to 16 voices, which gives it that cool sound. Then we've got the filter here just on oscillator 1 because that's the only oscillator, of course. Turn on key tracking, which is quite important to the sound. And then we've just got the glide here set to always glide, which is quite important because it gives it that pitch glide effect. And then if we look at the effects, we don't actually have any effects on this patch. It's all in here. It's very simple. And then in the mixer, we can just add a simple low cut because we don't want unwanted low end in this. And then if we just make a new pattern, we can make a cool intro pattern with this saw. So I've just come up with something which sounds like this. And then we can go ahead and add some more structure and other bits to the intro. So let's just add some basic build-up drums. I reckon if we copy these hats and the snare across to here, and we can duplicate them along like that. We don't want these ones on the pre-drop snare. And then if we just select all of these and turn them down a bit, because we don't want stuff to hit as hard in the intro, of course. And then we can just grab the kick here, just make a basic build-up kick pattern. And we want to double it just here. And then we've just doubled it again here. And then we can add some effects to both the drums and these build-up synths that we've got here. So first of all, we're going to go onto the drum bus and let's grab Fruity Love Filter. We can turn the resonance down, turn the cutoff up. We're just going to automate the cutoff, and then we can just make a shape a bit like this. Should work well. We'll probably want to add a bit more tension to it there, and then we can also add some build-up reverb. So we're just going to grab Fruity Reverb 2. We're going to turn this up, turn that down. In fact, we can turn that all the way up. Turn this down to about there, I reckon. Low cut, because we don't want reverb on the kick. So we can set the decay to about here, and then if we just turn this off and automate it, and then if we have a shape like this for the build-up reverb, it should work well with the low-pass filter, both working together to add a cool effect to the drums. And then we can add some effects to these build-up synths here. So first of all, we can add a low-pass filter to the saw here. So we're just going to use Fruity Love Filter once again for this, and we can simply make a shape like this. And then I also think it would be cool if we use the Gate Lab plugin, which we used earlier on the saw, to add a kind of stuttery effect. So you can see I've got Gate Lab here. So we're just going to automate it, and we can just make a shape like that. Should work well. For the time being, that's everything we're going to do for all the instruments. So let's whack in some effects. So as you can see here, I've just added in some effects. We've got a few impacts. And we've got this riser and impact. We've got a riser here and another riser there. So yeah, quite a few different effects, but they just kind of add to the whole atmosphere of the track. And I have also just added in a crash cymbal, just a simple thing at the start of the track and as the drop hits, and just added in a kick at the start. So we've got all these bits here, but there's just one last thing that we're going to add. Well, actually two things technically. So we're going to go onto the master channel and we can grab an EQ. And then if we just set this to low cut here, you might have seen this in some of my other tutorials. It's a cool trick you can do in the build-up. So what we're just going to do is this controls the low end cutoff for the whole track now. So if we automate this, and then we can just make a simple slope like this, and then it will cut off a bunch of the low end in the build-up, so then the drop hits even harder. And then we're just going to do another automation on the master. So if we select the stereo separation knob, and then we can make a shape like this. And we probably don't need to go that extreme actually, but if we just add some tension like that, we can also add some tension just there. And it's basically going to make the stereo width less so that when it drops, it suddenly explodes. And yeah, I think that's basically it for this track. So if you've been following along, you should have something which sounds a bit like this. Now, thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. And if you want to grab the project files for this video, as well as loads of other cool stuff, including sample and preset packs, exclusive tutorials, dubs, and more, make sure you check the top link in the description. Of course, if you found the video useful, please leave a like and subscribe, it will be greatly appreciated, and comment what video you want to see next. But yeah, thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next one, goodbye.